All right, dear colleagues, I think it's time to get started. Good evening. My name is Serhiy Zaitsev, and I work as program officer with the Office of International Institute for Education and Fulbright Program in Ukraine. On behalf of the Institute of International Education and the Fulbright Program, I would like to welcome all of you to this workshop. Today we will be talking about essay writing, and the idea behind this event was to equip you with the knowledge and some strategies and techniques that you may find useful as you work on drafting the two essays for your Fulbright Graduate Student Program applications. And here I'm talking about the study or research objective essay and also the personal statement essay that are both a very essential component of your Fulbright Graduate Student Program application package. To do that, actually, to accomplish this goal, we have invited to speak at this workshop Paul Fogleman, who is the Director of National Awards and Scholarships Office and the University Campus Fulbright Advisor at University of Indiana in Bloomington, USA. It is my great pleasure to introduce to all of you Paul, who is going to be our speaker today. So at this point, without any further delay, let me turn over the floor to Paul. And Paul, yes, so it's the mic is yours.
Thank you, sir, and welcome to everyone from Bloomington, Indiana. A little bit of information that I'd like to share about me. I completed an undergraduate degree in international studies and German, and then later went to graduate school in New York and completed a degree in international relations. Left New York City, where I met my wife, and we moved here to Bloomington, Indiana. I've been working at Indiana University for a little over 20 years. And since 2010, so about 15 years thereabouts, I've been involved in some form or another with the Fulbright program. So over the last 10 plus years, I am the person that helps promote the program to our undergraduate students. And then for those undergraduate students who decide to apply, then my job is to assist them in the process and explain certain aspects of the application to them, and then also help them with writing those statements that I'm going to focus on here in my presentation, and then getting feedback to those students about their statements. And so while I was an undergrad, I spent some time abroad. I have a sample statement here that I tinkered with, and you'll see where I kind of pretended to be someone else, but we'll get into that later. So I have an outline of my presentation to share here. Let's see what happens when I share the screen. Okay, good. So these are the slides, and you will all get access to these slides, and Serhiy and I will sort that out later. There are also a couple other documents that I referenced later, and you will have access to those as well. If there are other things during the presentation that I refer to that you think would be helpful, I'm glad to share any of this. So just want to lay that out. When I'm here in present mode, I can't see all of you on the right-hand side of the screen. So you may have to unmute yourself and interrupt, which is fine, or raise your hand via that Zoom function, and Serhiy is here to help with that. So, okay, let's get started. So here's the outline. I want to tell you a little bit about the people reviewing these. And then go into the two statements, the study research objective statement, which The way I describe it here, and I think it to our applicants here, is this is the most weighted part of the application. So this is the part, in my experience, that the reviewers spend the most time on and where they put the most weight. And then there's the Fulbright personal statement. We're going to talk about that. At the core of these two statements is the activity of writing, and it can be intimidating. And I want to show you some things that might help you with that. And then I also want to address briefly using artificial intelligence, and then we'll have time for question and answers. But as I mentioned earlier, if there are questions while I'm talking here, let me know. Sergey, just a note, I can see you. So if you raise your hand, I will catch it out of the corner of my eye here. Okay.
Sure, of course. Yes, no worries. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So this is some information about people who review these essays and then decide whether this is a person that we want to advance in the selection process. I'm making an assumption here with the first bullet point that it is faculty from college and universities in Ukraine. In my experience here in the United States, and the little that I have learned about the review process there is that there are 3 reviewers. And what one of the reasons that I'm able to share some of this information with you is that the entity that administers all things Fulbright is called the Institute of International Education, or IIE. And they invite us as Fulbright program advisors to sit as a fly on the wall and observe them. And so in my experience doing so, they've been probably 90% faculty from colleges and universities, which makes sense. They're people that understand the context that you're seeking to go into. They will be, all of them that are reading this will have some familiarity with U.S. colleges and universities and U.S. culture. They may have come to the United States and studied themselves. Maybe they had a Fulbright fellowship themselves, as I note here in bullet point 3. They're going to be older than you. And so this is a challenge that you're going to need to kind of, I don't know, chew on and digest in some form or another, and maybe think about what it is that you write and whether someone older than you is going to be easily able to easily understand what you're trying to express. They're likely reviewing applications pro bono, so they're not getting paid for these. And they're likely looking at 45 or 50 of these and being asked to rate them. One of the things that happens when you read that many applications in a relatively short amount of time is they start to kind of sound the same, and there is some structure to the statements that we are expecting, such as an introductory paragraph, and then the main part of your proposal, your ideas, your aspirations, your plans for those, and then something like a conclusion. One thing that you want to aim for with these is a way of distinguishing yourself from others. There are different ways to do that. We'll get into that more when we get to the statement, the research objective statement and the personal statement. The person who put Sergey and I in touch, her name is Sarah Phillips. She's a professor of anthropology here. This blue link will take you to her profile on our campus. It has a link to her resume and her CV. I don't know if this type of information is provided the same by Ukrainian universities, but this person represents who it is that U.S. students are writing to, and there's someone very much similar that you're writing to on the Ukrainian side. Okay, so that's a little bit about who you're writing to, your audience, so to speak. Okay, moving into the statements. So this is so the Ukraine Fulbright application. Sergey sent me those instructions. I pulled this section here and I tinkered with this a little bit, basically putting it into bullet points here. And these are things that, when people are reviewing these, they have that understanding of U.S. colleges and universities and U.S. culture, and then they also have these guidelines for reviewing that statement. There's no official rubric, this is what we call it, but they kind of take those two things and put them together. When students in the United States apply, they have to really carefully review the country summary. So, and those are they vary from country to country across the world. The country summary for all of you, obviously, is the United States. And so they're going to take the context of the United States and these questions and then apply that to what it is that you write to them. And they look for answers to these questions. So the area that you want to specialize or concentrate, what you want to accomplish, what you want to concentrate in your field, what aspects of the field interest you the most, and the program you expect to undertake, and how the study plan fits in your previous training and future objectives. I did make a change here, so notice that they're looking for the academic program. So the degree that you want to do here in the United States. And while I was preparing this and thinking about what might be helpful, I went over to the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, and I looked at the questions that are posed to U.S. applicants. You will see if you look at these, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of similarities here. However, I noticed that, for example, here's a question: why does this have to be conducted in the country of the application? What's the project? What's the feasible timeline? These are other questions that you may consider in preparing your statement, your study research objective statement. Okay, I'm going to stop here and just briefly go into share a screen that has a statement that was written by a U.S. student who drafted this statement. And this student, so I tinkered this to remove all identifying information, but you'll see it has kind of the basics. It has an introductory paragraph here. It has kind of the main part of it, and then there's a conclusion. This is what the student drafted and sent this to me. And then these are some of my my comments here on the right-hand side. So we used Word to make these comments, to make edits. But so in this kind of semi fictional statement or fictional person, they were from Austria and they wanted to come to the United States, and so that's kind of the setting here. And they wanted to study this field. Science and technology studies, but they note here what it is that they hope to accomplish there, and then they wrote this sentence here. I plan to take the technologies of governance module in the first semester to understand the challenges that have emerged in regulating transnational technology companies as they have developed state-like powers. And as the person reading this and unfamiliar with what they have in mind, I had these questions. What do they mean here by state-like powers? That wasn't clear to me. And so I posed these questions to the student who wrote this statement. Later on here, they wrote about, they projected to writing a thesis, which, is something that you want to accomplish there. And They wanted to analyze how populist movements, political movements had affected the definitions of the right to privacy, et cetera. And this led me to, here's a lot that's going on in my head with, with what you just wrote. And here's my suggestion here. The typical reader is not going to have the historical context that you have in your mind. I happen to know this, the student via some discussions and advising sessions. They were working in Washington, D.C. I suspected here that this was in the context of the job they had at the time. And my suggestion here was, I don't know if you have the same in in Ukraine, but we have origin stories for superheroes. And there's one professor here who he likes to talk about statements in the context of, think about it as an origin story. You're going to need to bring the reader back to where this all started and then bring them to where you want to go with it. So some of that you're going to need to fill in. And in this exchange, I note to her, here's this book that I recently learned about by Francis Fukuyama. I noted I didn't read it, but it came up and it might be relevant. Another thing that came out in this draft version of the student statement was this privacy paradox. And here was something that it was an opening, but to something that would be that they could tell me more about and be specific with an example of it. So, and then later in this statement, they had to learn some German, and they outlined how they were going to be learning some German in order to bring their German up to the level that was going to be needed. And then there were questions here that I had. They were very vague about they wanted to work in public service for the federal government. This happens a lot, and it's understandable to you as 19, 20, early 20s to be intimidated, to have a difficulty in articulating those future plans. But generally, the more specific about these, the better. And so you'll see here that when the student went back to the drawing board and sat down again, they came up with this revised statement and addressed some of the things that I had asked about, and they also meet some of what is in the rubric for your study research objectives. So these are things that they want to accomplish. Here is where this student then filled in this information about what they meant by companies having state-like powers, because that's not something that the typical reader of these is going to understand and easily pick up. They describe their specialization concentrations. They have the specific topic of inquiry that they contextualize. They preview their thesis. Again, they address what they want to accomplish, what interests them. So you could go through this and look to see, this is what's in the rubric. These are those bulleted points back on my slides. Almost every sentence in these statements should link back to something in that rubric. Okay. Moving on to, before I move on to the personal statement, I did want to go back to the slides and pause there just to see if there were any questions about the research objectives, study research objectives statement. Okay, so moving on to some advice that I have, and I've hinted at some of these in the course of talking about these. I came across this essay by a writing teacher, Laura Hartenberger, who's at UCLA. I provided this to Sergey so he can distribute it. It's called What AI Teaches Us About Good Writing. It's 12 pages long. It's on the long side, but it has a lot of really good observations about human writing as opposed to AI writing. I'm not going to lecture too much about that. But this sentence really stuck out to me in the context of preparing these applications. How we measure successful writing changes depending on what the writer is trying to accomplish, and good writers are flexible enough to adapt to different scenarios. They make intentional decisions around three elements. Audience is those Fulbright reviewers. Purpose is you want to study in the United States, and context. You're doing it in the context of a Fulbright. So who you're writing for, to what end, and in what circumstances. Those are basics. It makes it sound very easy, but it's one of those things that's easier said than done. Another piece of advice that I give to students that I found is generally the more specific, the better. So we saw a few examples of that in that sample that I provided you. For example, the companies having state-like powers. There's some of these things that, you do as a writer that you may not notice. So one thing is, instead of like specifying a broad degree such as computer science or broad discipline, I used this as an example because we have a Luddy School of Informatics, Computer Science, and something else. Honestly, I can't remember the name. I think it's called Systems Engineering. But they have human-computer interaction design. They have cybersecurity. They have intelligent systems engineering. So, when you can be more specific, it's almost always better and more compelling. It's also a little harder. So have at least one other person review your draft statement, ideally someone a little older and someone of experience in the United States who will give you candid, honest, and constructive feedback on your writing. I was thinking about one place that students get this assistance here is there are job boards or classified ads online where people offer this service. So that's an idea. There may be native speakers in your local communities that would be willing to help you with this. Again, this is another thing that's easier said than done, but you really want someone else to read this. But it needs to be the right person. Generally not family members, but it could be a family member, not exclusive. So this is another one that, your statement should be future oriented. Consider reading it through that lens and interrogating any sentence about your past accomplishments and interests and asking yourself whether that sentence is contributing to what you want to communicate to the reader. Rhetorical devices such as a Fulbright grantee in the United States, I will, may help you in that. I wanted to make a little bit pause here again and share this. So I went through that statement that I showed you earlier, and I noticed that student in this one paragraph that I showed you earlier, they had the instance of will was these 4 times. So this was you're kind of subconsciously communicating to the person reading this that I, as the person who wrote this, understand the context that I'm going into. So rhetorical devices like this can really help. Out of my own curiosity, I went through that person's statement and I highlighted in yellow any sentence that used verbs in the past or the present tense and sentences that used verbs in the future tense. And so there's kind of a pattern here. If you go through this, they use the past or the present to kind of introduce the reader to the topic of their paragraph, but they end it with something that's future oriented with them in the host country. Okay. So notice here, there's a lot of green here because they're talking about what they want to do over there in the future. And so you do need to contend with the boundaries of time and space. You need to project yourself. We're here in March of 2025. You would want to be starting this in the United States in September of 2026, right? And if you're going to do a 2-year program and complete a thesis, you will want to project to 2026, 26, to May of 2028, and you're completing that master's thesis or whatever the requirements for the programs that you identify are. Most of them will likely be 2 years, but there may be some variation there. But you really need to, and this is again, easier said than done, but you really need to project to what it is that you want to do there, or here in the United States. And so that's one, perhaps the most kind of strongest piece of advice. So another thing here, while thinking about what you want to do in a graduate program in the United States, you should be interested in your topic. And I use this very intentionally. You should feel excited and maybe a little nervous about the prospect of carrying out your plans. If it's not something that really grabs you and is in your gut, and I use that very carefully, maybe think about next year, maybe another time, maybe you're not quite ready yet. There will be other things that you could apply to. Maybe there's more that you need to do in the time between this year and next year. Okay. So the last bit of kind of overarching goal here that I've highlighted. One thing to keep in mind with these is you're trying to get invited to an interview. So you want one or all of those 3 reviewers to say to themselves after reviewing your application, I would like to talk to this person. And so that may help you as well. This is another, you're trying to distinguish yourself. Okay, I could take another pause here if there are questions. You can get a drink of coffee. Okay, moving on to the personal statement. So, we think of the statement, the research study objective statement, as the who, what, when, where, why, whereas the personal statement is less kind of regimented, I guess. And so it can include information about your education, practical experience, special interest, career plans, your purpose in applying for study in the United States. It should not be a mere listing of facts. It should discuss how your life experience and background contributed to your desire to pursue study in your field and your purpose in applying for the study research. Some of my observations about to assist you in this, I encourage you to read about the history of the Fulbright program and understand its mission. And you would want to do that even before writing the research study statement. Understand who Mr. Fulbright was, why he created the program. There was a very good article about him in an issue of Foreign Affairs a few years back. There's plenty to learn about him. Even a Wikipedia entry is enough. And then maybe beyond that, look at people who have gotten Fulbright awards and what they've done. They like to tout some of those people. It should be relatively easy. A big part of the Fulbright program is creating this mutual understanding and engaging with people in the host country. I think the personal statement is a good place to do it. And so, and engage is a big word in the Fulbright program. And so this can be challenging for some applicants. I found that I recall one year there was a student here who wanted to go to Germany to spend most of the time in the basement of an archive reading the correspondence of a long dead poet. And what we needed to do with that student is help bring them out of the basement of these archives and interacting with Germans. And so it was in the personal statement. They had a very compelling case for why they wanted to go and spend a lot of time, mostly alone, in these archives. But, the personal statement was the place where they could really lay out how it is they look forward to spending time interacting with people in the host country, with Germans in that case. So your activity, if it's one that, so yours are going to involve studying. So I think here, if your study programs tend to be more international in scope, so maybe how you look forward to engaging with students from multiple international backgrounds, how you plan to engage with students on the context of a U.S. university campus. That would be another place that you could discuss. And don't limit yourself to only the university campuses. I'm in Bloomington, Indiana. It's a very kind of typical college town, but there's a lot that happens here, outside of the university campus. And if you're going to go to a university in a big city, there's plenty of other research opportunities that you can look into and explore. So try to see yourself. Again, this is part of that projecting yourself to somewhere in the United States, engaging with people here. Something that we see now and then, or I'm not sure how much, but sometimes students misunderstand the personal statement as the place where they relate to us as the reviewers, how they've overcome or dealt with tragedy, loss, adversity. One of the more disappointing things is a student who will spend, I don't know, one or two whole paragraphs detailing the negative impacts on their life of their parents getting divorced. It sounds mean, but people get divorced. That happens. You're not serving yourself by trying to curry sympathy from a reviewer. It comes across as manipulative. However, if, on the other hand, a friend or a sibling or someone died of leukemia, and you have decided to devote your life to helping come up with a cure for leukemia, and that's motivating you to come to the United States to study bioinformatics, et cetera, by all means, that can be something that you address in the personal statement, as long as it's related to what you hope to do here in the United States and beyond. That's the rule, and that's my rule. My last point here is some poetry is allowed in the personal statement. Sometimes I describe the personal statement as reviewers are looking to see what it is that you decide to tell and then how you tell it. And there's an example here that might help with this. There was a student who wanted to go study heritage in Uyghur China in the Xinjiang province. And in that student's case, it was a student in anthropology, and she had a whole long paragraph where she described a scene in the movie The Devil Wears Prada, where Meryl Streep's character corrects Anne Hathaway's character on the color blue. It's cerulean blue, and everything that's behind that. And that's kind of a poetic way of conveying to reviewers what's the impetus, what's the motivation. It doesn't have to be something that you read about. It can be something that happened to you. Maybe another expression that might be helpful here is a clarifying moment. Maybe there's something about U.S. culture that has stuck with you and motivated you. Maybe you want to lay that out. Okay, so this is my advice about the personal statement. Moving on to writing observations and Purdue's online writing lab. So I shared the first 32 pages of this book. In addition to the what AI teaches us about good writing, I've also shared this book, the first 32 pages of this book by John Warner. It's called Why They Can't Write, Killing the 5-Paragraph Essay and Other Necessities. So a little explanation here. The 5-paragraph essay is what we use in high school, or was used in high schools here. Introduction, paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And while that is useful in getting the ball rolling, it tends not to be helpful when you come to university and sit down to write. And I don't want to read this whole thing out loud to you. I'll leave that up to you to look at on your own. But I added this emphasis here to help you understand what you're seeking to accomplish in the course of writing. And the middle paragraph here, it says, the gap between one's intentions and results can never be closed. In my head is the greatest novel in the history of humankind, but something happens between what's in my head and what winds up on the page to diminish this effect. So when we're writing, there kind of a veil comes over us, and you need someone else to help you kind of pull that veil to the side so that they can tell you what it is they didn't understand, where the discrepancy is between what's in your head and what's on the page. It's hard. And so advice that I give to people about writing is, get a draft out there. There's an author here in the United States. She has an essay called Shitty First Drafts. And she just says, get it all out there, get the stuff out there, put it away for a day or two, go dig in the garden, go pick up trash in the local park, go do something, get your head somewhere else. Do other things that can help you then, what you can help think about what it is that you wrote, what it is that you want to change about it. But you've got to put it down for a certain amount of time and then come back to it. You have to intentionally distract yourself with other things, and that takes some time. Okay. The second to last thing is the Purdue University is here in Indiana, and I can't think of a better resource for kind of nuts and bolts guidance. This link will take you to that web page. The menu on the left-hand side of the screen has these different, and then there's sub menus underneath all of them. It has a section there about graduate school writing. It's extremely well organized. I wish our university had something as good. Purdue's kind of our rival, but I've been referring students to this for years, and I'm glad to report that it's still doing quite well, and it's a resource that it's all freely and easily accessible to you. Okay, my last section, my last slide here is a little bit of Shakespearean here, to use AI or not to use AI. So one of the obvious pros here is that it's very easy and convenient for you to type a prompt into one of the essays. I would like to do graduate study in human-computer interaction design. Can you help me prepare a statement? So I've tinkered with AI a little bit, and I can say that in one instance, it did provide some good feedback, and it may help in creating an outline and informing what it is that you're writing. As I was preparing this, I was thinking that it may be really useful. You're all going to be writing. You should write in your first language and then translate would be my piece of advice. But that's me kind of reaching there. I'm not, I'm not you, and you need to write how you write. But AI should be useful in this regard. It's gotten much better over the years. And so, we're all kind of grappling with AI and how to use it in the context of higher education. And so on that note, some of the cons of AI, and the first one here, so we've noticed that the text that it generates, it's going to be grammatically correct, but it can also be boring. And you are not aiming for boring in this. Only you can give it the human touch that's representative of you. The machine can't do that. And also, if we as reviewers, so if we've all started developing kind of a sensor, so to speak, and if we're reading something and we suspect that AI was used, and whether it's cited or not, then we stop reading and we lose interest and we kind of get a little irritated. And that's not what you're aiming for either. So you're going to have to each find this balance on your own. It is something that can be helpful, but with limits, and in certain contexts here. So, and again, you're not aiming for boring. Do you want to get invited to an interview? Okay, that's what I had for today.
That's all great advice, Paul. Thank you so much. Yeah, really. So thank you very much for your participation. We'll wish everybody a nice evening and a good day to you. Nice day to you, Paul, and
Yes.
all the best.
Okay.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you very much.